Please welcome Phil Hettema.
I want to talk today about experiential design and the creative process behind it. Now, what the heck is experiential design? Simply put, it's the combination of architecture, placemaking, media, stagecraft, and a whole bunch of other disciplines all rolled into one experience which the audience encounters from the moment they walk in the door till the moment they leave. We do a lot of different projects of a lot of different scales, types, but the one thing they all have in common is that they try and make connections with people through the experiences we create. Now, just real quickly, I'm going to give you a brief look at the kind of different projects we do. Things we do, like I said, some of them are huge, big projects the size of small cities. We do master planning, things like that. Some are small museum exhibits. No matter what, they are all multidisciplinary. Some of them are educationally based, some of them are culturally based, some of them are purely entertainment. But in all of them, what we try and create is immersion and engagement of all the senses. Because we find absolutely that when we can take people out of their normal life, put them in a situation where they engage all their senses, comprehension increases, retention increases, and engagement increases, and that experience becomes memorable. I will use any technology, stagecraft technique, media to tell the story that's appropriate for whatever we're trying to accomplish. Now, obviously, there's a real fine line there between gimmickry and compelling experience. And the way we try to walk that fine line and make sure that we're staying true to our purpose is by being storytellers. I believe in the ultimate power of storytelling, and we think of ourselves first and foremost as storytellers. To me, compelling stories reach beyond the surface and they touch us at a more profound level, both in ourselves and in the collective unconscious. Why do those movie moments that we were just talking about mean so much? Let me give you a simple example. Many of you are probably familiar with the work of Joseph Conrad and his outline of the hero's journey, the archetypal epic story that's found in almost every culture and has been for centuries on this planet. Well, you may not know that when George Lucas created Star Wars, he basically took the storyline and laid it over, step by step, that archetypal story of the hero's journey. I believe firmly that's why that story resonated so strongly with the public. That and some bravura filmmaking, of course, but that story was powerful. To me, the surest evidence of this is every time someone does tell a story that's so powerful, Hollywood will then say, well, let's do that again, and they'll recombine all the parts to put it together, and then wonder why it doesn't catch fire in the same way. It's because somehow the storytelling has been lost and hasn't connected firmly with people. So when we tell stories, whether they're for entertainment, whether they're just a few moments long, or whether it's an important cultural or social story to tell, we try and stay focused like a laser beam on that notion of storytelling and not get seduced by whatever exciting technology we have to tell that story with. Those are merely tools. And for real creative leaps to occur, we need to detach ourselves from what we've done before. Ignore the formulas that seem like the obvious solutions to a problem and let ourselves go into our own creative unconscious to find the way to tell that story in a way that will connect with our audience in an equally powerful way. The projects that we do are mostly brick and mortar involved. They can take 3 to 5 years to complete. But we're often making creative decisions in the very early stages of that process that won't manifest themselves for 2.5, 3, sometimes 4 years after we make those decisions. So we better be focused creatively on what we're doing. And I want to talk a little bit today about how we approach that creative process. First and foremost, we cast every project we do like you would cast a play. It's not enough to put together a team of talented people. We try and make sure that all of the players involved have exactly the right sensibility to tell the particular story we want to tell. And once we do that, then we move on to a brainstorming process that we've evolved over the years. Now, there's a lot of myths about brainstorming. It's not true that you can just lock a bunch of creative people in a room for 4, 8, or 12 hours, walk away and come back and have this brilliant idea appear to you. There's much more process involved than that. When we work on our projects, the first thing we do is to brief the entire team about the background of the project, what we're trying to accomplish, and really importantly, who's the audience that we're speaking to. And then, contrary to what you might think, we send them away individually to let them develop their own ideas. There's research that actually says if you put 10 people and let them work independently for an hour, they will be much more productive than 10 people working in a room together, as much as you might think the opposite is true. And while they're working individually, we try to incorporate many of the creative techniques that some of the other speakers have talked about today, things like lateral thinking, Edward de Bono's theory that if you want to get from A to B in the most creative way, turn around and go 180 degrees in the opposite direction, because that will free you from the preconceived notions of what you want to do, and you'll come up with more creative solutions. Now, once everybody's had a chance to gestate ideas like that, then we do bring them together to brainstorm, and that's when the fun begins. We put all the ideas up on the wall, and we encourage people to build on those ideas so that the sum is greater than the parts. Now, contrary to what you might think, counterintuitively, in this point in the process, we work really hard for quantity, not quality. We want all the ideas we can get up on the wall, because it's even that crazy, stupid idea that's going to generate another creative thought from somebody else, just like the exercises we did a couple speakers ago with Ali. And the other thing about brainstorming is it's very important during that process. We don't edit, we don't censor, we want more ideas, and it's not the role of the brainstorming group to censor. It's really typical human nature to say, oh, I don't like that idea, that's not going to work. But we actually save that for a later point in the process. It's only after we've created all these ideas that we use that as a palette to select the best ideas. Most of all, we need to give ourselves permission to let go of preconceived notions and go into that unconscious space, sometimes letting the project go, sleeping on it for a couple days, letting dreams take over, so that we can really let ourselves create those powerful story solutions. I want to share a little bit about a particular case study. This is a project that we just opened literally last week in New Orleans. We worked over 5 years on this project, and it's at the National World War II Museum there.
At the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, there is a new experience as epic, as extraordinary as the conflict it honors, beyond all boundaries. It is an immersive 4D cinematic journey through the war that changed the world, shown exclusively in the museum's one-of-a-kind Victory Theater. A mammoth panoramic screen, special theatrical effects, and multi-layered environments surround you. You will understand as never before the price of our precious freedom. I'm proud to have served as executive producer of Beyond All Boundaries, and you can see it exclusively every hour only at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans.
Now, you could do a lot worse than having Tom Hanks as your executive producer and narrator. He was extremely involved. I got to tell you, this man is a mensch. He was great to work with, and he knows more about World War II history than I probably ever will in my little finger. The way we decided to approach this project, we immediately knew we wanted to tell the story in a much larger-than-life way. So we created a theater that seats about 50 people less than this one does, but the screen's 120 feet wide, about 40 feet wider than this room, 30 feet tall. There are 4 layers of projections, moving sets, scenery, effects in the audience, surround sound, all those good things. But most of all, we needed to focus on the story we were telling, how to do it in a compelling way and not do something that was just a piece of triumphal American history. We wanted to communicate the cost of war, the the sacrifice of human life worldwide. We start with 65 million lives lost. And then by doing it in this enormous scale, using both archival footage and newly created CGI footage, contrast that by telling the personal stories of 40 people who were actually there. Tom Hanks helped us out by getting a few of his friends like Brad Pitt and Tobey Maguire and Gary Sinise and 30 other people to do the voices for those folks. When I started with this project, I had a personal connection to it because my dad flew 35 missions in a B-17 over Germany, and we found out that everybody on the team had a similar kind of connection. I guess it's generational. And all those, my dad's 86 years old, those vets won't be with us very long. But we were really telling this story for a different audience, one that doesn't understand the significance of this event, and also why there are lessons for us to learn from it today, hopefully so that it will never happen again. Ultimately, I think we combined new technology, old technology, and some spectacular, hopefully, storytelling. And so far, the reviews from both young folks and old folks has been really meaningful and moving to us. So if you're ever in New Orleans, I would encourage you to go. I'm inordinately proud of the work we did there. So what's on the horizon from here? Where do you go from telling a story like that? We won't get to tell another one like that anytime soon. So the other projects now go in a completely different direction. These are a few things that people haven't had a chance to see. You're some of the first to see it. We're working with Harrah's Corporation in Las Vegas to build on the Las Vegas Strip this new icon. If you're familiar with the London Eye, this will be about 30% bigger than the London Eye. It'll be the biggest observation wheel in the United States, probably in the world. And in addition to being a pretty spectacular theatrical icon on the Strip, I'm hoping it's going to be a beautiful and incredible piece of design in and of itself. And it will have a highly interactive pre-show experience leading up to you taking your flight around the wheel. And then the cabins, there are 30 cabins around the wheel that hold 30 people apiece. Each will be individually programmable, so every time you come back, you'll have a completely different experience of audio, video, sound, light inside that wheel. This is a project for Chicago Museum of Science and Industry, the largest science museum in the world. It's about exploration of both the Earth and Mars. We wanted to target the museum's target audience, middle school kids, and tell them that there is still much out there to explore. They tend to think, we've discovered it all, we've been to the moon, why should we go anywhere else? So we start off on the Earth, we take them into 3 terrestrial environments. They actually get to go into deep caves, polar exploration stations, and the deep ocean. And then we contrast that with science that's going on Mars, and why the science we do here on Earth reveals stuff about Mars, and what we learn on Mars reveals stuff about what we're doing here on Earth and our own planet. The most exciting thing about this project is the connecting experience between Earth and Mars is an immersive theater that's 360 degrees around. It begins in a room much like this one, and 3 minutes into the presentation, the dome splits and reveals an infinite space above, which takes us on a metaphoric journey from the Earth to Mars. Last new project I want to talk about for a second is in Southeast Asia, a cultural center where we actually bring and recreate a village that combines all of the different ethnic tribes of the region and shows how they all came and were influenced by European cultures, etc. The audience will be able to actually walk through that village, but also there are 4D shows where you will be able to understand the history of the region. My favorite is a storytelling show, 360 degrees in the round, where a live storyteller will be able to begin telling ancient folklore and legends, and as he or she begins to tell the story, the room comes to life around them and the audience to bring that story to life. But as we work on these projects, I think about where we're going in the future. Where do we go next? I believe firmly we're on the edge of a real technological revolution. It's a quantum leap. We now have social networks, sense networks, geographic positioning, RFID, 3D media, all developing that are going to make things you can't even imagine possible. The only thing that's stopping them from being possible right now is some economic barriers. But we're going to have the ability to do amazing, amazing things. And in fact, that technology, as we all know, is at our fingertips now, and we're getting incredibly facile with the way we use it. But the question remains, what do we do with that stuff, and how do we keep telling compelling stories? We literally are at a place where virtually anything we can imagine is possible experientially. We can create environments that recognize you, respond to you. We can customize experiences that to your particular interests. We can group visitors by affinity, even when they don't know each other, and team them together. We can even allow audiences to author their own story, even as they go through that experience. So the more intense and exciting and fast-paced our ability to communicate becomes, I really believe that there's a pendulum swing that happens that makes us want even more to find that intimate connection and that sense of story and meaning behind it. Ultimately, our challenge is to use the ever-increasing palette of tools before us, not for the novelty of what they can bring us, but to find ways to connect, to tell stories that touch us more deeply, and that connect us together at our collective unconscious, to make us richer as individuals and as a society. Thanks a lot.